Have you ever watched a series that's hard to stomach? I know it's weird to say, but let's say that it's painful to keep on watching. And that's not because the series is bad by any means. No, not in the slightest. It's because you just can't stand watching these terrible things just keep on happening to the characters on screen. But regardless, you keep on watching because you need to know how this story ends.
Nando demo.
I mean, that right there, seriously. Hearing that phrase is gonna become my new trigger phrase in the future. It's gonna give me PTSD level flashbacks to this gorgeous OP that we see, but remind me of all the terrible things that we saw as well. Because I can't describe or really express the amount of dread that I had while watching this series. I mean, I had one of my other friends watch this as well, and he had to stop watching because he described this only as torture porn. He put this up there in the same level as Vinland Saga and Berserk, as series that you have to watch if you hate yourself. And I guess I hate myself the right amount because, my God, did I enjoy every second of myself when I was watching this series, even though it was quite a bit of a tough watch. And the series that I'm talking about right now is Orb, of the Movements of Earth, a series that I actually believe everyone needs to experience. And my God, is it an experience. You cannot passively watch Orb and enjoy it, not even in the slightest, because you are going to absorb every little thing that the show throws at you, every brutal torture scene, every close encounter to death, every little thing like that is going to affect you, and it's probably going to affect you in a little negative way, chipping away at you slowly and methodically until you start to even think to yourself, is there even hope in this instance? And right when you're at that point, when you think that you've seen enough torture and enough blood and enough gruesome events happen, the series drops some life-altering philosophy. I mean, it drops these amazing lines time after time. There are things that remind you why these characters do these things, why they are pursuing the truth at the cost of their own lives at times. And it makes you think to yourself, oh yeah, that's the reason that they're doing this. And on a surface level, if you're looking at anything about the series, it's gonna look like it deals with a lot of heavy religious topics. And by all means, it really does. I mean, this is 1400s Poland over here that's under the control of the church's rule. Everything that comes into contact with them. So when it comes to thought, whatever you do, whatever you say, they are policing everything in this society, which makes everything so much harder for people that are trying to think outside of the box. But here's the thing, you don't have to have any prior knowledge on religion or be religious or be non-religious to enjoy the series. I think that everyone can virtually benefit from reading this because, hear me out, the series makes you question so many different topics, whether it be about death, whether it be about life, existence in general, and it never says that one thing is wrong or one thing is not. It just makes you doubt so many different things. And each one of our characters comes to their own conclusion. There is nothing set in stone aside from the one fact that we do have in the series, which is that the Earth rotates and revolves around the sun. Something that makes me remember just how for granted we take knowledge in today's day and age. I mean, it's shocking, right? Ever since you're in elementary school, you learn that the Earth revolves around the sun, or maybe even further before that. It's a universal truth. And in class, you're taught that it's Copernicus that gave us the heliocentric model. He's the person that's responsible for changing the face of the entire world with this discovery. And because of that, you don't think twice about the journey that it took people to actually get to that point. The trials and tribulations that people had to undergo just so Copernicus could eventually come out with this truth. Because in a time of extreme censorship, before our astronauts, satellites, pictures of the Earth from space, before anything like that was ever conceived of, and even before Copernicus himself, people have looked up to the sky and hypothesized, have conjured up these mathematical means to try and discover the way that the universe works. Because this series is an exploration of the people that came before Copernicus, the people that laid the groundwork, the foundation for what eventually became the heliocentric model that we know of today, the people that risked their very own lives, that used sheer will to move the world forward, the ones who were inspired so much to give their own lives in the face of certain death. And I think that is what makes this series so incredibly special. Because when we're looking at it, we see these people that lived long ago as far and distant from us. We see them as other, completely different, when in reality, they were people just like you and me, looking up, coming to their own conclusions, even if that meant that they were going to be facing punishment if they were to reveal what these truths and conclusions were. This series shows us that it's not just one person that's going to be able to change the course of history. It's a whole chain of people that win, that lose, that live, that die. It's everyone together that causes the world to move on, and how history is so incredibly important because of that. Orb is a great view of society in general, and that's kind of crazy because again, we're in 1400s Poland over here, with the Inquisition at every corner. The series is divided into 4 parts, each with its own central characters. In our first part, we follow Rafal. He's a boy that's an incredible genius prodigy that has the luxury of going to college. He has an incredibly promising future, and he has the potential to go and study anything that he really wants, until one day, he has the task of going and receiving a heretic, someone that has committed blasphemous deeds by going against the church's beliefs. He's someone that Rafal has to go pick up and take over to his house because he's gonna stay there for a while. But upon meeting Rafal, the heretic sees his chance. He sees that he can inspire this boy to fulfill the rest of what he needs to do. This guy, this heretic, the reason why he's a heretic is because of his love of astronomy, because of his belief of the heliocentric system. Something that he encourages Rafal to go out and study for himself, to see that he's not making this up right on the spot. And while of course, Rafal is hesitant to do this because he knows 1, it's blasphemous, and 2, it goes against the apparent design that God has of the entire universe, he goes into it a little bit more and more until he discovers that this is actually probably the more rational option. Even though, of course, the tech that's around would not be sufficient to prove it. Eventually, the heretic gets taken for blasphemy again because they found some of Rafal's work, and so he takes the blame for it. But eventually, again, Rafal then gets taken for blasphemy for studying this as well. Really, no one is safe when it comes to this society. And at the end of part 1, we see that this boy, this 12-year-old boy, is willing to die for the heliocentric model because he believes that to be more important than his own life. Because of this dream and the faith that he has in it, he ends his own life, but it doesn't end the future of this idea because he leaves his writings in a stone chest, waiting for that small, slim chance that someone's gonna go in, open it, and continue his work. And that pretty much sets us up for what we're gonna see for the rest of the series when it comes to it. Faith in the smallest chance possible for someone else to continue your legacy. And it also shows us that the people we're going to be following are not safe whatsoever. In fact, spoiler alert, everyone in this show that's a main character is going to die. And they are going to die in some of the most brutal ways possible. But they're the people that are carrying the torch for this idea. And since you know the inevitable outcome, who's the person that's credited for it, you know that none of them have a chance at actually being named as such. The only constant that you're going to get in this entire series is someone that you can say is probably one of the greatest antagonists you're ever going to see in any anime or any manga. He's an inquisitor by the name of Noak, a man whose sole job is to kill heretics. And he really doesn't give a damn about what the people are experiencing when he's torturing them. I mean, this guy is so unfeeling, uncaring. He's a monster when it comes to this kind of work. And he is very good at his job. He is the church's tool to oppress and subjugate people wherever they are. And through protagonist after protagonist after protagonist, he will show up and he will cause damage. Run from it, dread it, destiny still arrives. He is inevitable and he will make every single character's lives a personal living hell. That is the one constant that you are to expect when you're watching the series. He is the one thing that you should not be surprised to show back up. The first and last time that we see him have remorse towards one of the people that he is tasked to torture and get information out of is with Rafal, because he's a little boy and he sees that this guy is too young to take part of a mission, to take part of this idea, something that's larger than him, and for him to end his own life, he definitely feels pity for that. But he's also an incredibly complex villain as well, because later on, we see just how much he cares for his own family with his daughter, Jolenta. And oh my god, it just keeps getting better and better. My favorite protagonists, though, have to definitely be Oxy and Badini. That duo was just top tier in my opinion, and since we followed them the longest out of all of our main characters, I got attached to them so much, even though I knew every step of the way just how painful it was gonna be once we got away from them. They were then gonna be met with Jolenta, and she joined them as like a sort of trio, and then after that part, then we got part 3 with Draa, and finally with part 4, we ended with Albert, the only real life person that we met in the entire series, and the person that would be our eventual connection to Copernicus. They're all very different people with different kinds of ideas and things that are at stake to lead them to these ideas of heliocentrism. None of them have the same reason for it at all. Badini is a corrupt person when you're looking at it in like a moral perspective. I mean, it's kind of weird how he ended up being a part of the faith. He's an incredibly prideful man who wants to become famous and known in terms of history because he's a person that wants to be known as the man that made heliocentrism mainstream. He wants to have the glory all for himself, and for the wide majority of his run, we see him as he talks about burning everything if he is to be caught and captured and killed. And when we first meet Oxy, he's a man that is so terrified, petrified by the fear of hell and death and what comes after, that he's trying to get as much hope as he can in this hopeless society that he sees. His job is to kill people, and none of the people that he's killed seem happy. Heliocentrism, this view of the sky, becomes this thing that lets him bring out that repressed hope that he has, lets him see that beauty that he's avoided seeing this entire time. And it makes him regain that faith that he previously had about humanity, about the future, about everything that's at stake. And some of that eventually has to rub off on Badini as well, because he also, instead of being this narcissistic person, also gives up some of his ideas and some of the things that he's been keeping up to chance as well, as he saves his materials in that same stone chest. And well, that gets burned. Oxy's writings, the things that he's kept, those are the things that stay alive for the next generation of people to use in their knowledge, in their pursuit of heliocentrism. Their dynamic is fantastic. It's top tier. It's my favorite characterization and arc that we see in this entire story. If anything, I would say without them, I would not have been as invested in the story whatsoever. They just grew on me so much, and I just loved every second of seeing them on screen. It then again got extremely painful once we got to this extremely torturous scenes. Oxy having his mouth just completely ripped open is horrific, and I wouldn't want anyone to experience that ever. I'm terrified at that even being a thing that happened in the past. Draa is a character that was raised to follow her own convictions. Her conviction in this case being money. She thought that this writing, the book that Oxy wrote, would be something that she would be able to use to, gain riches and be self-sufficient so that she wouldn't have to rely on anyone else and end up like her father, who ended up dying chasing money. When she encounters this book, she realizes that it's so good that she can potentially make something out of it, which she then doubles down on when she encounters the Heretic Liberation Front, which wants that book from her. And which, by the way, the Heretic Liberation Front, top tier people right there. Schmidt, he's a fantastic guy, no matter how extreme his methods were. I don't know why, but this guy just gave me big Bruce Wayne vibes over here. It's something. It has to be like the eyes or the hair, not the mustache at all, but still, big vibes over here. And while he and his squad weren't necessarily compelled by heliocentrism, they wanted to disrupt the church and its power that it's been using and manipulating people with for years. Heliocentrism just turned out to be a way for them to do that. Draa's motives eventually changed once she met Jolenta, the leader of the Heretic Liberation Front, Noak's daughter, now 25 years in the future. Upon meeting her, she realized that this was something a lot bigger than just money. This is something that she would actually want to throw away her convictions for, because this is bigger than her and everything else around. The entire Heretic Front did that as well, as they sacrificed their entire lives to give Draa a chance to escape. Everyone's deaths are so absolutely brutal in this. One of the hardest things of it all is seeing that Draa doesn't make it as well. The last thing that she's able to do is to send that letter that Jolenta tasked her with, and that is it. All of the characters that we've had so far, their story kind of ends here, because Albert, the person that we follow afterwards, has no prior connection to anyone over here. He hasn't met anyone, read any of the papers or the work that they've been working on, nothing in terms of a connection, in terms of having any sort of feeling towards what happened previously. I mean, hell, even Noak is dead in this situation. Albert is the outlier in this entire world, and I'll get to his part a little bit later. But all these characters become people that you become so attached to, and you just want to see each one of them succeed, even though they've got the faintest chance to ever get that far. And the characters know that too. I mean, that level of despair that you have is something that these characters have as well. They know that their chances are slim when it comes to passing on their information, when it comes to passing on their legacy. But they'll do it anyways because it's that important to them. To fan the flames of the potential revolution, of the potential coming of knowledge, that is what makes it all worth it. And even though everyone's motivations might be coming from somewhere completely different, they're all leading to the same means to an end. Death is one of the topics that the series takes extremely seriously. It's something that might even give you a few existential crises if you're actually too engaged in the story. Everyone fears either hell, non-existence, whatever their belief is, but the thing that ties it together is that they believe that even more than death, even more than that fear of burning in hell forever, they fear that the world being left in the dark is something that's even scarier. And that goes kind of hand in hand to the new belief system that all of our characters get when they're looking at our world. They see it as so beautiful, as so perfect, as something completely different the second that they learn of this knowledge of the heliocentric system, because they realize that it all makes sense if you see it from that angle. And not just that it makes sense, it's that everything around them ends up looking like a miracle. That existence, the chance of us being born on this planet that moves to the beat of a sun in a galaxy, in a sea of galaxies, we seem so infinitesimally impossible to even be here right now. But we are, and that's the miracle. And for us to experience this world and to acknowledge and know just a sliver of the known universe and how it works, that puts all of these characters at ease. I think the character that probably expressed that the best was Smith, with just raising his hands up while looking at the morning sun, saying that this was all he was born to do. Like I said, love that guy. And that's an idea that I feel that is very much strongly connected to all of our three first parts. Because the last part with Albert is the most different. Albert has no connection to our previous characters because he's never met any of them. He hasn't had any interaction with them. The only piece of connection that he gets is a side conversation that he overhears. A piece of information that says the name of the book that Oxy wrote, On the Movements of Earth, which makes him think for a second. That doesn't make any sense, but it makes him question. Even though he doesn't end up being the person that eventually comes up with a heliocentric model, he ends up inspiring that other person. So even though when we see Albert over here, we realize that everything in terms of knowledge has already been lost, that flame still persists inside of him. His part is also a little bit weird because of some things that the story throws in there that might make or break it for you. I mean, as an example, you get a grown-up Rafal over here that's displaced in time as being his tutor, some roughly 20 or so years after he's supposed to be dead. It doesn't really make too much sense over here, but I've seen two prevailing theories as to why this is the case, as to why we see this grown-up version of him. First of which, using real-life examples as to why this would be the case. Reasons being that Albert in real life was known as being a fictionalist, someone that liked to tell these tales and portray them as being real. So you can kind of imagine all of this that's been going on, this history that we've been watching for the first three parts, as it being fictional. Something that he created to kind of explain how he got inspired to this point and how that inspiration was able to trickle itself down until it got to him. We just see this from a different perspective. So the real Rafal could have been the one that was his tutor. It's just that instead of him writing him as an adult in his story, he wrote him as a counter to himself. A boy that's fascinated with heliocentrism, and instead of killing for it, he's willing to die for that goal. You know, rewriting all these characters in his own personal fanfic. But that's the first theory over there. The second theory is that all of these events did occur. Everything in the past did occur. All to the point to where Draa was able to send out that letter, which I think is very possible, which makes sense as to what we see later on. But like how we see in the OP when it comes to Albert, we see that he has no flashes of these previous faces because there's no history that he's building on, which means that he has no connection to any of these previous characters, meaning that when we get to someone like his tutor, even though the name's the same, Rafal, it's not really that it's the Rafal that we know, but it's someone that we put Rafal's face to because that's someone that has the same name. Like we're using that previous face and name to fit this character for this purpose. Because the purpose of this adult Rafal over here is to show us that the character himself is not so different from all of the Inquisitors and all of the other people that we've seen. It's just that they're two people on opposite sides. He's a character that holds all of the moral high ground, everything that we've been seeing throughout the entire series. It's just that now we see that when he's met with an obstacle, he treats it in the same way as one of the Inquisitors, as Noak would. They kill to further their agenda, to further what they believe to be the truth, showing us that if push came to shove, they wouldn't have been so different after all. That's what I think it shows us there. Aside from that, it's a nice little branching off point to show us that the legacy of these characters left behind still continued in some way. My only grievances with the series might be in terms of how it just leaves things in a little bit of a dissatisfying way at times. Because the series, since it's so obsessed with the fact of making these characters suffer as much as possible, sometimes it gives them a little bit too quick of a death, or it leaves a little bit of a need for more. And that's exactly what the series wants to do. It wants to give you that hunger. It wants to give you that feeling that you're missing out on something else, alongside the dread that it's giving all of the characters. It purposely makes you so attached to these characters that you feel a hole when they're gone. So that's just me, I guess, nitpicking at that point. But there was one point in this story where the story did something so well done that I wasn't expecting it in the slightest. Because when we see that Jolenta is the leader of the Heretic Revolution Front, immediately my mind went to her confrontation that she's eventually gonna be having with her father. Something that does end up happening for a split second. I mean, it's a moment in time where he looks at her for the fraction of a second until she martyrs herself and blows up the entire farm. At that point, I was like, God damn it. I wanted them to exchange at least a few words before she did that. But I was gonna say that I was satisfied with at least seeing him hold her hand in the same exact position as when she was a little girl. I thought, all right, that's as much as I'm gonna get, and I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm okay with that. We're not gonna give Noak the satisfaction of knowing that that was his daughter. Until we get to the end of his arc, when he's burning in the church, having that vision of Rafal, talking about his sins and how he finally sees himself as the villain of this grand story. He understands it now, and then he asks Rafal if his daughter went to heaven. And since he's an illusion, he tells him, well, I can't tell you that, but if you really want to believe that, then you still have one final thing that you have to do. And then this man pulls out that hand one more time. He puts the glove over it, and then he prays to God to let her into heaven. And it was so phenomenal to see. That was something that I was begging for. That is probably one of my favorite scenes in the entire anime right there, and it almost makes me tear up. It's right up there, right with the moment when Draa is interpreting the writing to Jolenta over here, and she sees a vision of Oxy sitting in that seat just speaking instead of it being Draa. That moment right there gave me that same level of just, I almost wanted to tear up and cry. I loved seeing scenes like this, and the series absolutely knows how to pull on your heartstrings. It does it so well. Those scenes alone are enough to wash away any of the inconveniences that I've seen before. And now I'm sad that I don't have more of this series to read or watch or anything else to continue on. It sucks, but it makes sense because we got a fantastic story out of it. But with that, I think that wraps up the majority of my thoughts on Orb in general. It is a stellar series that I will recommend hundreds of times over. And I think right now when it comes to topics like censorship, when it comes to people trying to hide the truth, it's things like this that make me feel like this is a very timely series. I mean, there's a lot of moments that you might catch yourself going like, oh, okay, or that's kind of like a reflection of something that we might see today. If you're in the US, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think even on that level, it's a fantastic watch to even just draw a comparison on. It is a great, great series. And I want to know what your opinions on this were. Do you think this is one of the greatest animes that have come out in the last 10 years? Or are you going to say that this is a really pretentious series that really just undermines everything that all of these characters and real life people did to actually make this come to fruition? I'd love to know what your thoughts are regardless. So please let me know down in the comments section below. And as always, I was Randy, and I'll be seeing y'all next time. Peace.